Hello and welcome back to Uncut Tutorials 2.0. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing where we last left off, in which we talked a lot about Ground Force unit class design, order of battle, and more. We're going to deep dive into things like formation templates, ground combat itself, the actual interactions with the events and the UI that you need to be thinking about, how to replace your units, how you're going to use unit series, and more. There's a lot to talk about in this episode, but let's get right to it. So, let's start with formation templates before we get into the actual combat situation and then explain the scenario that we are in. So, if you go over to this tab, we talked about this, but we're going to head over to this tab called Formation Templates. Once you've designed your unit class design or your elements, which are what these are over here, we got our troopers, we got our logistics vehicles, we got our HQ formation units, so these are elements. We then want to turn these into formations. And essentially what that means is think of these as components, okay? So if you're designing a ship, you need various components to build your ship. And think of the ship as the formation. In this case, we have an infantry battalion. And that battalion contains 1 HQ, 150 light anti-vehicle, and then 1,510 light armor personal weapons forces. Then once we have designed this, essentially, well, you don't need to research the ship design. Once you've put the components in and researched them, essentially, the elements, once you've got the elements and you put them in, you then just build them over here with your ground forces training, and you can queue them as such. This is how you go from unit class design, formation templates, building, and then eventually you head over to your hierarchy. Okay? Something to consider here is that there are a few very important things to understand when it comes to ground force building. And the number one thing to understand is that the game incentivizes horizontal construction compared to vertical construction. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is you cannot have, say, 5 ground force construction facilities building one formation 5 times faster than if one ground force construction facility was building that formation. The game only allows one facility to build one formation at a time. Because of this, you need to understand that the easiest way to build a formation, or in this case a hierarchy, because that's really what you want. So let's say I wanted to build a regiment, okay? We need to build 1, 2, 3, 4 battalions, and we need a regimental HQ. Because of the costs involved here, what we really want to be doing is we want to be using 5 facilities to build it at once, so that we can build a regiment every year. This incentivizes you to have a hierarchy, because if you have your formations in a single, if you have all your elements in a single formation, so all your individual units, your infantry, your armor, all of those guys in a single formation, your cost will be so high, and you can't split that cost between multiple ground force construction facilities. And since you can't do that, you're going to have a bad time. And that means you're not going to be able to build as quickly as you otherwise would. This is an issue that commonly occurs when people deal with surface-to-orbit weapons, because weapons that are ship weapons are very expensive. And we'll get to STOs in another video, but suffice it to say, high-cost formations require you to horizontally merge them. What I mean by that is, let's say we have this regimental HQ here. Now, this regimental HQ contains 157 logistics vehicles. Those logistics vehicles are pretty expensive. It's going to take us double the time that it would take to build these infantry battalions to build a regimental HQ. But we need that regimental HQ to be able to have a hierarchy for the infantry battalions. So how do we solve this? What we do is we build formations, or we design formations, and we have half and half of logistics vehicles. We horizontally build them. So what I mean by that is we have, 5 construction facilities instead of 5 construction facilities building one thing, which we can't do. And we build those logistics vehicles in separate queues, so in separate facilities, and then we merge them using what we looked at yesterday, which was the amount pop-up and the show elements, where we can drag and drop in. This will allow us to vastly reduce the time needed, and is what you should be doing if you're ever thinking about doing surface-to-orbit weapons. Alright, now that we kind of understand how ground force construction works, we can look at some of the combat situation. So let's talk about the scenario here. Over here, I have the enemy we'll be facing. So in this case, I have the Mungyong Republic, okay? And we have 3 regiments, and those regiments contain within themselves 4 infantry battalions. These battalions are on different situations, but in this case, we have 4 infantry battalions on frontline defense, and they will be our guinea pigs to be attacked. On the other side, we have player race, and this is friendly formations, and we have the same kind of setup with the same units. And what we're going to do is we're going to quickly show and test out the combat situation here. So, obviously, we're both at the same tech, we both have the same formations. We're going to do 1 regiment against 1 regiment because that seems fair enough. And we're going to kind of explain and show off how the effects of terrain, how the effects of fortification drastically change the combat situation and how it favors the defender most of the time. We're also going to go over how the events window is significantly changed. So, what we're going to have happen now is we're going to have this infantry battalion over here. We're going to have them do the attack for us. So, we're going to put these guys on the front line attack. We'll start with frontline defense because that'll be easier to show you guys. It'll be fairer initially. So, we're going to do for all subordinate, and so that these guys will attack. Now, because the enemy formations are on frontline defense, these formations can't actually attack them because they're in rear echelon and they don't have the elements, i.e. bombardment units, to attack them. So we're perfectly okay here. So these are our formations. Now, what happens is every combat round is equivalent to 8 hours. So you must wait 8 hours before a combat round occurs. For a combat round to occur, both nations must be hostile to each other. And furthermore, both nations must have the ground forces on the same population and detected, and be able to actually hit them with the position that they are in. So frontline defense, rear echelon, that kind of thing. Every 8 hours, they will then attack each other. We'll now try and show that off. So we're just going to save here quickly. We're going to run an 8-hour increment, and we're going to begin the initial combat phase. So let's have a look at what we'll actually be fighting over in the Mungyong Republic. So if we go over to the Mungyong Republic over here, so Mungyong Republic, we will be fighting these formations over here. All right, here we go. Player race. We're going to do this on the perspective of player race. So keep in mind that we're going to be fighting on a temperate world here, so this will affect things compared to a barren, which will be a world with no terrain. Okay, 8-hour increment here. 8 hours. They're not attacking each other, which is a concern. Also, I need to change this to rear echelon. You should be hostile. You should be hostile. There we go. Yeah, they just took a bit to get it. They just took a bit. Okay, so let's kind of have a look. What are we seeing here? There's a lot. There's a lot to look at. There definitely is. So, we've got on our first ground combat turn. The first thing that you're going to see is ground combat intelligence. This is at the top here. This will tell you the estimated force of the enemy, and you gain this through fighting them for a longer period of time. So essentially what this means is, as you fight against an enemy for a longer period of time, you'll gain more intelligence about the types of units they have, the damage they cause you, and all that stuff. You will have an error range that will decrease the longer that it goes on. In this case, we have an estimated error range of 100%, so we have really not much idea on how many units they have. Do also keep in mind that this has to do with not the formations that are fighting, but the actual formations on the planet itself. We then have collateral damage. This is caused by the damage we cause the enemy, and then it's adjusted based on some percent chances, the size of the planet that we're fighting over, the weapons we're using, that kind of thing. We then have element versus ground unit report. So in this versus enemy ground unit, we have the GUC versus GUC as essentially ground unit versus ground unit. So kind of reporting how effective they are individually. We have the attack report, so how many actual destructions, all that kind of thing we got from our formations as a total. So how much did we kill of the enemy? And then we got the formation attack summary, so how well did each of our individual formations do? We got the ground attack summary, which is overall how much our attack summary did. So in this case, 129 troopers died, and we killed 38 light anti-vehicles. We also found out about a new alien ground unit because we were fighting it. So the light LAIPW, which means light infantry armor personal weapon. We found out what we think their armor and hit point value is based on what we were able to do to them. We also found out their weapons because of the damage we took. We designated them appropriately. We classified their weapon of 10 pen and 15 damage. That's a light anti-vehicle, and then obviously a light or personal weapon. Then we'll have intelligence update. So these are the intelligence updates. Then we have element loss. So this is our losses compared to where we saw the losses up here. So we took 173 hits, we got 173 penetrations, and we lost 173 units. Then we obviously did some more intelligence update. We got a then loss summary, essentially. We got a loss summary, which is over here. And then it basically ends. So we get a total summary of how many forces that we lost. So we lost 348 troopers and 121 light infantry armor LAVs. We lost out of these 2 battalions here, and this is as the Mungyong Republic. In total, and then we did another combat round here, and you can kind of see it repeat. So the most important things you want to be looking at is going to be losses you're suffering, which formations are getting hurt the most, and how your troops are stacking up. So in this case, we're actually losing 3 times the amount. Okay, so we suffered. We can have a look here. If we look at the losses summary, so element loss summary. So we took 160. We took about 300 or so hits, and we dealt. If we look at the attack summary, we dealt, 170, about the same amount of hits, but we just weren't able to penetrate or do enough damage. We were able to penetrate, we just weren't able to kill them. We got unlucky with our rolls. Now, something you'll be noticing is how, these formations are very low hit chance. We're looking at 452 hits from these troopers, on these light anti-vehicle troopers versus light anti-personal weapon. We're only getting 12 hits, and we're killing only 12. So, hit chance is going to be modified by a few things, and we'll get to that in a moment. But suffice it to say, because we are fighting on Earth, we are getting a significant decrease in our hit chance. What do I mean by that? We have a hit modifier, which affects our hit chance, and we have a fortification modifier, which also affects our eventual hit chance. So on Earth, we lose 50%. We get a times 0.5x multiplier on our hit attempts, essentially, our chance to hit. This is because of the terrain, which is temperate forest. And then we also get a fortification modifier. The fortification modifier is 1.25. What this means is that we gain 25% over our current fortification modifier. In this case, the infantry battalion here has about a modification of 1.07. So this means we probably get about 1.33 fortification actual practical effect. And that fortification is a dividing factor on how big of a chance we are to hit. And we'll get to kind of show how that works in a little bit. So I hope you guys are following along. There's a lot to take in. So basically, these combat rounds are going to occur every 8 hours, and every construction cycle, and they're going to use supply. So every 8 hours, they're going to use a full round of combat supply, which you can see, in the ground forces tab over here, which I will bring up. So you can see the ground force supply they will need, 1,877 in this case, and that's how much they'll take up firing every increment. And they're going to then use logistics trucks. They've already used 4 logistics trucks, and they've automatically done so. Because those logistics trucks are in the regimental HQ and they can supply those formations below, they will automatically seek them out. Let's go back to the ground force summary then. So these are the numbers you want to pay attention to. You can see your scouting information. You see your losses suffered. You want to see the amount of damage you're doing, losses you're suffering, what the enemy has, and then the intel on what the enemy is doing. Now you may ask, okay, well, if we're taking so many losses, what do we really do here? Well, it's hard. If you're out-teched, you're going to be in a bad place. If you're doing frontline attack, you're going to have no fortification, which is going to make you in a much worse situation. And there's various other factors to consider. We also have no commander bonuses in this case, because we're not really talking about that at the moment, but it's something we will get into eventually. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys what happens when we deal with a formation that has fortification. Okay, so we're going to change all these guys to rear echelon, and we're then going to grab this regiment. We're going to set for only formations. We're going to set these guys to frontline defense, so these guys will now be attacking. We're going to go back to player race. We've got our formations here, and we're going to show what happens when we engage a target. So the reason for those hit misses, by the way, was that fortification level. So we kind of already saw that, right? So because of the fortification level, they got 3 times less hits, essentially. And because they got 3 times less hits, they did 3 times less damage. Because they did 3 times less damage, we were in a much better place. And as combat rounds would have gone, it would have gotten better and better for us. So fortification level is king. And we're going to exactly show that right now. So I'm going to change all of these guys to field position. Yeah, to a field position. We're going to do only 4 subordinate formations. We're going to put them on frontline attack. This gets rid of their fortification level immediately. And then we're going to have a look at what happens. Okay, so let us just increment along here. So here we go. So attack summary. So we took there was 2 different combat rounds there. So we are the player race. Okay, we can go right down here. There's a lot to look at. So this is the amount of losses we suffered. We suffered 314 troopers and 81 trooper LAV. These guys. So we took about 400 losses. Okay, 400 losses. We inflicted 150 casualties. So we're trading effectively about 1 to 2.2.5. This is why fortification matters, and this only scales higher on mountain worlds, on jungle worlds, on all these different worlds, and that's when you need those capabilities we talked about last episode. So always consider fortification. Always consider how important it is to deal with. Another thing that we now need to go over is the weightings, right? So if we have these formations and these formations over here, and the enemy were able to attack us, because they're in real echelon, they would be weighted less. But I think that the thing everyone really wants to know, and we'll get into as kind of the last moment of this episode after the initial ground combat, and that is really the basis of ground combat. I know it's a lot to look at, but it's pretty simple. You look at units lost, you look at the attacks you did, you look at what they kind of have, and you can see here we're getting more accurate information on what they have now. And you kind of understand how the combat is going. Fortification is king. You can increase that fortification even more so, and we're going to go in to show that, and then after we'll go in to show how to do unit replacements. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put these guys on rear echelon. So cell formations, and I'm going to also change the player race, these guys, to the same thing. And I'm going to bring in some engineers. Okay, so we're going to go for engineers, and the great thing about these engineers is that they provide increased max self-fortification, and they increase that multiplier even more. So we're going to create 5 of those. Now, something to understand about engineers. Okay, essentially how this works is capacity. So you have, let's say you have 50,000 tons of infantry battalions, okay? And you want to fortify them to max fortification. The construction vehicles will provide a certain capacity to the formation that they're in that they can fortify. So, for example, let's say a construction vehicle formation has the capacity to help fortify 10,000 tons of forces. And this fortification capacity is based on your construction tech. It's based on your commander bonus for fortification and other things. You can read into that. I'll probably put a link in the description. It's based on the number of vehicles you have and how many of those components, really. So in this case, we're going to have a construction capacity of 3,100. Okay? So 3,100, 3,100. Now that's going to be modified a little bit. These engineers will fortify formations on the body that they're on. But if they go above the capacity, they're going to have issues. And what I mean by that is that they are going to fortify much less effectively, as in it will take far, far longer. So if you want to fortify properly, you're going to want to have a serious amount of fortification vehicles not fortification, construction vehicles to do so. So we are going to do a fortification again. I'm going to try and get max fort on these guys. So let's just increment along here. And yeah, just increment along. And we can have a look at the actual formation. So you can see they should be fortifying. Probably only fortifying like one of the formations, if I imagine correctly. Location, construction vehicles. We'll just give them some more time here. Am I looking at this wrong? I might be. The construction vehicle should be modifying these guys up more. Logistics vehicle 2. Ah, yes, because it's modifying that. Yeah. Yeah, it is increasing the fortification. We just got to kind of wait. So that's the total fortification level. We just have to wait for everything to get fortified again. So just increase. 2.7. Not sure why that's doing that. It should be fortifying correctly. I'm just going to put these guys on frontline defense for now. Set all formations. Oh, that's not correct. We'll put these guys under here then. See what that accomplishes for us. Yeah, there we go. They're getting fortified now. It's just taking us a while. So we're just going to slam these combat engineers in. As they need to be actually part of the thing. That is a mistake I made, but they need to be actually part of the hierarchy, so to speak. Since they're separate hierarchy, obviously, does cause us some issues. So you can see the fortification level. That'll go to 6 for most of these guys. But it's going to take, obviously, a bit of time. Did they all just get murdered? They might have done. Alright, well that's gone a bit to crap. Well, okay, what we'll do is I'm going to show you guys how the replacements work. Okay. Disregard that. Essentially, combat engineers in formation will be able to fortify the friendly formations to their max fortification level, which is here. And they will do that based on their construction capacity and the fortification construction capacity, and that's based on your racial tech, that's based on the vehicles you have, and all that good stuff. There you go. We just had some hiccups there. Okay, so let's talk about this. We have, I'm not sure why I have this infantry battalion here, I'll just delete that real quick. Okay, so we have this formation called Warstock. What is Warstock? Warstock is basically, think of this as where all your replacements go. It's a big clump of formations that you will use to derive your replacements from. So how do the replacements work? Okay. Each formation has a replacement template. This replacement template is started as their default template that they have. So in this case, we have these formations over here, which we have a look at. This formation is a full formation. The replacement template is infantry battalion, and that's based on this, okay? This number. They will replace that battalion. You can change their replacement battalion down here, okay, on change template. They will replace, if they have the units available, to that number every construction phase, either out of combat or during combat, okay? The priority in which they do so above other formations in which they draw these is based on this number. The lower is higher priority, okay? Then you have useful replacements. In this case, we're going to toggle useful replacements for this formation. And what this means is that the Warstock, in this case, will be used for replacements by all the other formations. But for the formations to understand that it's going to be used for that, we need to go over and to do what unit series is, okay? Because these formations don't understand that this formation has similar things that it can replace itself with. Replacements do not work unless you have a unit series in, okay? So we're going to go over to unit series. And in unit series, we essentially have we get two different abilities to do things there. Number one, you can replace old elements with new elements as you need to. with unit series, and it will understand this and will replace accordingly. So what do I mean by this? Let's say you have a light personal weapon. So we're going to create a series, light LAI, okay? We're going to then drag this over, right? If we have light infantry armor PW2, and we put that above this in the hierarchy, so if I go here, then the game will understand that what you should be doing is drawing the LAI, essentially. You should be drawing it above. So it will go for the second variant, or the more advanced variant, before it goes to the first variant for the replacement. In this case, that's not really an issue for us. So we're going to delete this series, okay? And we're gonna do a few things. So we're gonna create a new series. We're gonna call it infantry, okay? We're then gonna call infantry LAV, right? We're going to just add these in. This is the simplest way, and this will just make sure the game knows what it needs to replace. We're then going to also put in HQ battalion, and we're going to put in HQ regiment. Okay? We're then going to drag and drop these. We're then going to put logistics vehicle, and then we're going to add these here. So now we have these unit series, and then once we get newer versions, as we get better tech, which we will need because there is no such thing as automatically updating your technology. You have to replace the element itself. You can put the elements above these in this unit series, and then the game will check for that in the formations that are used for replacements, in this case, the war stock, and will try and replace with those elements first before the other elements. Okay? So now that we have these in unit series, we're basically done. We can do the replacements. So what we need to do now is we need to wait. We have these formations here that are damaged, and these formation or these elements over here will be used for replacement. So we're going to wait 5 days, and we're going to try and see that. Okay? So we're going to do a 5-day increment. So we just did a 5-day increment last I checked, unless yes, there we go. So that's a construction cycle. And you can see right there we go. We replaced immediately. So we've got a war stock, we just used that up, and that's how simple it is. What you want to be doing, what you really want to be doing, is building lots of these things called reserve units, merging them into a big stockpile that you keep in reserve, and then using that stockpile to replace losses in the field. And the question becomes, why do you want to replace losses? You want to replace the losses, one, so you don't have micromanagement in hell. 2, so you're not always having to build new formations. 3, so that you can upgrade your formations over time that are currently in the field. And obviously people want to also keep the formations, RP, they want to keep their stuff around. But as you can see here, we replaced all of our losses, and now we have completely full formations again. So that's where I'm going to end the episode off. We didn't go over everything. We still got STO targeting to talk about. We still got service to orbit weapons overall. We still got a few more ground combat things. We still got the bonuses we need to talk about. A bunch of other smaller things as well. But I hope this has helped. Kind of explaining what you're looking at in the ground combat window, explaining how unit replacements work, kind of explaining how fortification works in a simple way. If you want the more in-depth understanding of these things, I highly recommend you go and read the changelog. And that'll be posted in the description below, and you can go have a look. I'll also post the relevant posts on the changelog that relate to this video. Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Please don't like to comment, subscribe. It really does help me out. Yeah, consider becoming a member as well. Goodbye.